Before we begin, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to Joel over on themovieforums.com for recommending I check this film out. Joel, you're a star for this. "1989's Split is a relatively unknown feature directed and written by Chris Shaw. Shaw has a history of working with multiple media formats, and while he originally, and presumably continues to have his career based in mathematics, over the years he's branched out into several creative areas, including sculpting, software design, and painting. And while filmmaking is yet another string to his bow, Split stands out to me as one of the few films that I've seen that I find almost impossible to think of a comparison. This film stands alone in what it is, and while other films and music videos seem to have borrowed elements of its style and story over the past 25 years or so, either knowingly or unknowingly, I was absolutely astounded at how relevant a film from the late 80s could be in modern times. This is Shaw's only feature-length production, and he both wrote and directed it. I also need to say the fact that he hasn't produced anything feature-length since made me terrifically sad. Now, the plot's a little bit jumbled, so I may not get this 100% correct, but this is my understanding of what happens in the film. In the not-too-distant future, we follow a man named Starker, played by Timothy Dwight, who's either discovered that reality isn't totally chaotic and that there's a Big Brother-esque thought police observing humanity with the aim to sculpture it into a narrative that they see fit, or Starker himself has generated a Big Brother-esque thought police in order to liven up and give meaning to his own existence within this reality. You see, Starker has a gift. Not only does he have the power to shape reality and travel to multiple universes using the power of meditative thought, he also has the ability to disguise himself as all manner of different characters. So either Starker created these guys to liven up his existence, or these hitmen exist to shape reality and Starker is an abnormality which in their view must be purged from the system. Either way, Starker is in a constant state of hiding via his disguises, and also by not forming emotional attachments with people within the system. He's able to avoid Big Brother for the most part, though every so often the thought police do catch up with him and this forces him to change his disguises or hop realities. As a result, the narrative of this film is a complex spiderweb of ideas and might-have-beens. And I must say it's totally refreshing to be able to sit down to a science fiction film that, if anything, slaps its audience and says, sit up and pay attention, otherwise this will make very little sense. I mean, even whilst giving this film my full attention, I still believe that I didn't quite grasp everything the film wanted me to. Particularly in the third act, which ramps up what was already a very complex narrative to border Lynchian territories. The dialogue's also quite dreamlike in places. It reminded me very much of shows like Chris Morris's Jam, where words are being said that don't particularly feel real or believable. The deliveries are all very dreamlike and the characters are sort of semi-aware of this but run with it as if it's perfectly normal. It creates this ambient atmosphere that makes the audience feel woozy, which in turn makes what happens on screen have all the more clout when it then suddenly cuts to a perfectly grounded, fast-paced, nightmarish scene like the Thought Police's headquarters. This, however, does sometimes work to its detriment, as occasionally the dialogue can just come across as a little bit stilted. It's very rare that that happens, but it does on occasion. It also must be said that while this film indulges its audience with twists and plot holes, it's all on their terms, and it fills in the details at its own pace. It's a really clean-cut stab at pure sci-fi that manages to knock it out of the park. The only thing I think I could accuse this film of was maybe being a little bit overlong. By the third act, there did come a point where I started to clock watch, and I think if maybe 10 minutes or so of the film was removed, it'd run a lot tighter and be a lot more quicker paced. I also realised that as this film is 2 parts sci-fi to 2 parts experimental art house film, it could be forgiven for being a bit overly long. But I feel this is one of the very few areas that it could have been improved. The cinematography here absolutely blew me away. Usually when I get pointed towards tapes or an obscure film that no one's heard of, the cine and direction tend to be absolutely appalling. This film's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It has an astoundingly good sense of composition, brilliant use of mixed shot types to create really visually striking pieces, and the way it mixes early CGI with multiple layered edits creates astounding collages of sound and vision that are very hard to show out of context. You need to trust me on this, it's a beautiful looking film. The direction of this production as well is absolutely outstanding. All the cast seem pretty keyed into Shaw's ideas, and they perform in a way that's wavering on camp, but in an incredibly entertaining way. This film oozes that new wave vibe, which is helped with heavy use of CGI. This was one of the earliest films to adopt such a practice. In some places the CG holds up remarkably well. In others it comes across as a bit more of an experiment. But then, that's kind of what this film is. A giant experiment of sight and sound. It's mind-blowing. Timothy Dwight, Joan Bechtel and John Flynn are all amazing as Starker, Susan and the artist, and how this is for the most part this cast's biggest hit absolutely bewilders me. Shaw himself is fantastic as well as the agency director, and gives a somewhat eccentric if not ultimately watchable performance. Like many experimental film pieces, I believe that this film is open to multiple interpretations. My own personal belief is that this film is dealing with the topic of what makes us human and what societal constructs have done to alter the definition of humanity. I also think that this film deals with the idea of what defines reality and how in the wrong hands reality can be twisted to take on a different meaning. Which in 1989 was science fiction, but in the 21st century, in the days of rolling news, PR teams designed to craft narratives of events and mass social media, is bordering on a contemporary thought piece. This film takes on a whole new level if you treat it as if it was made for modern audiences, with very big implied comments on the impact of social media narratives distorting and shaping world events, and even deeper thoughts on the blurring of the lines between humanity and technology, when viewed in the mindset that this was made for an audience of the 21st century. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that this film was well ahead of its time, looking both forwards and backwards. It's dripping in 80s culture and ranting about the modern day. It has a wonderfully powerful soundtrack and precision editing that only further add to the reasons why I find this film endlessly watchable. At the time of recording, this film is available to purchase through Chris Shaw's website, though having been in touch with Chris himself, he's informed me that a newly remastered version of Split was or is due to be released at some point in or around December 2017. This new version is remastered from an original 35mm film print, and to quote the man himself, is way better than any other DVD or video version to date. It's also apparently jam-packed full of extra features that the current DVD doesn't have. While I'm not entirely sure if this version is region-locked, though by the time this video is published I'll most likely be able to answer that question for you. Please do check the description if you are interested. I can guarantee you literally won't have seen anything like this. When the worst criticism I can level at a film is that it's a pinch overlong for my taste and that some of the dialogue is a little bit too stilted at times, you know you're in for a good thing. A brilliant all-rounder and a great example of modern sci-fi that challenges its audience rather than making it sit through 2 hours of stunts and explosions. This is a complete head trip, and a total must-see.